Call out the jury and call out the first witness, Mr. Chavez.
All rise.
You may be seated. How many minutes will pass?
Barbara Meyer.
Ms. Meyer, if you take a seat, I need to swear you to raise your right hand, please. You swear to affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth and the counsel of law.
I do.
Will you take a seat?
Good afternoon, Ms. Meyer.
Hi.
Before we start, please state your name and spell your last name, please.
It's Barbara Mills Meyer. Last name is spelled M-E-Y-E-R.
Thank you. Ms. Meyer, what's your profession?
I'm a paramedic.
Okay. Let's get a little bit about that. What's your educational background, Ms. Meyer?
Like college
Yes.
stuff. I have a bachelor's of science in early childhood education and then a certificate of paramedicine.
Okay, and to become a paramedic, what do you have to do? What do you have to complete?
It's changed since I went through, but I had some prerequisites, about a year to a year and a half, and then a 2-semester course.
Okay. And is there any practical?
Yes, there's 2 internships. Well, when I went through 7 years ago, we had 2 internships. One, the first semester is a little bit shorter than the second semester, and then we had the second semester, which was it's very long, actually.
Okay, and where are you employed now?
I'm currently working in San Miguel County for Superior Ambulance.
Okay, San Miguel County is, what city is?
Las Vegas, New Mexico, Mora's, but yeah.
Okay. And let me refer you back. Where do you live currently?
I currently live in Rio Rancho.
And how long have you lived in Rio Rancho?
Just shy of 10 years.
Okay. And let me refer you back to May 25th, 2015. Do you recall what was going on that day, the special day for May 25th?
During the day, no, not particularly.
Do you recall that it was Memorial Day?
It was Memorial Day, yes.
Okay.
I was off,
Okay.
which is odd.
Okay. Now, back in 2015, where were you employed?
Albuquerque Ambulance.
Okay. And how long have you been employed with Albuquerque Ambulance?
My start date for Albuquerque Ambulance was April 2011.
Okay, so you had been there 4
About
years?
4 years, yes.
Okay. And what did you do there at Albuquerque Ambulance?
I was a paramedic.
Okay. And what did that entail? What did you do? I mean, what was some of the things that you would do, that you were required to do?
We responded with Albuquerque Fire Department as well as Bernalillo County Fire Department on 911 calls. We also did interfacility transfers, hospitals, or skilled nursing facilities.
And back on May 25th, 2015, were you in Rio Rancho that day?
Yes, sir, I was.
Okay. You said you were off?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anything planned for Memorial Day that day?
Staycation, just staying at home.
Okay. And you said that you were living in Rio Rancho at the time?
Yes, I was.
Okay. Now, I'm going to refer you, kind of narrow it down a little bit. I'm going to refer to about 7 o'clock p.m. on that particular day.
Okay.
Do you recall what you were doing then?
I was at the Esther, there's a memorial park next to Esther Boone, I believe, library, or Boone. I was there with a friend of mine.
Okay. And who was that friend?
I call him Mikey. It's Michael, and I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce his name.
Alacron?
Yes.
Okay. And have you and Mikey worked together at some point?
Mikey and I had, yes, he and I worked for 4 years, so I
Okay.
knew him well. We were good friends.
And
We are.
approximately, to let ladies and gentlemen of the jury know, you talk about Memorial Park. What streets are close by Memorial Park?
The cross streets are Pine Tree and Southern.
Okay. What is across the street from Pine Tree, from the Memorial Park? Is there a
It's
shop?
it's a strip mall. I think it has an Albertsons, Dollar General. I think there was a pizza place there as
Okay.
well.
Okay. And this was around 7 o'clock p.m. You were there, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you go with Mikey there, or did Mikey meet you there?
We met each other there.
Okay.
I drove my own vehicle.
And where did you park?
I parked near I believe it's called the Water Diversion Park entrance, facing east.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit, well, not marked, has been admitted as State's Exhibit 416C. Let me play this. And if you can turn around and watch the monitor, and as it's going, kind of describing what you see. Okay, so-
Describe what I see on the.
Yeah, on the monitor.
You have a monitor? Did you have a monitor?
Oh,
Oh, okay.
there
I'm
we go.
sorry.
Thank you. So basically, I see a officer's vehicle, some crime scene tape.
Do you recognize the location?
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you indicate to the ladies and gentlemen?
That is where I rendered aid and
Okay.
Officer Benner.
I may have the wrong photo drone here. Let's see if it turns around. Yeah, it's going to be the wrong one. Let's see if this is okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So this is the scene that where I witnessed and tried to help Officer Benner after being shot.
Can you get the mic a little bit closer?
I'm sorry. Is that better? Ooh.
Still not the one. Yeah. Michael. Okay. In any event, you were at that particular location, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, You were parked at the Memorial Park, which is across the street from where Officer Benner's vehicle was shown. Is that right?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, and that was basically east of the vehicle?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what do you recall where you were parked? Exactly where you were parked?
I remember the space, yes.
Okay.
Based on the opening to the park, I was the space just to the right.
Okay. Now, during that time, did anything occur that you were saying that you had to render aid? Can you explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what happened during that time?
Where would you like me to start?
From the beginning. About 8 o'clock p.m.
I was sitting in my vehicle. It had Mikey, my friend, and I were at the park. We were just walking around. It had gotten cold as the sun was going down. I believe it began to rain a little bit, so we went to sit in my vehicle.
I think they're having a hard time hearing you, so if you
Oh.
could project your voice.
Yes, okay. Should I start over?
Yes.
Is this better?
Yes.
Okay. We were sitting in my vehicle. We were at the park. We had walked around the park. It started to rain and get cold, so we came back and sat in my vehicle. Okay, now I'm too close. Sorry. I sat in my driver's seat, had the window down because I was smoking a cigarette. Mikey had gone to his vehicle, gotten something to drink, Monster, some kind of energy drink or something, if I recall correctly. Came and sat down in my vehicle, and we were talking shop about calls that we had run recently, things as such.
Okay. And did anything occur that caught your attention while you were seated in your vehicle?
Well, as we were talking, I heard a police siren, kind of a whoop whoop type thing, and then from my left side mirror, I saw the police lights come on.
Okay.
Continue?
Yeah, continue.
Okay. I looked down in my left side mirror and I saw a large vehicle with a police officer's cruiser behind that vehicle. It appeared that the larger vehicle was slowly kind of moving forward, and I wasn't quite sure kind of what was going on. It looked like perhaps the officer wanted to come around the vehicle. I made a comment out loud in the vehicle. Hey buddy, you better get out the way. That guy's got people to pull over or something like that.
Was this the conversation you were having
With Mikey? Yes. I wasn't facing Mikey. I was kind of watching what was going on. It appeared that the vehicle in front, the larger SUV-looking type thing, did move forward and did start to turn right to head towards Southern. It'd be south on Pine Tree, I believe. Enough room for the officer to get around if he needed to. When he didn't, I again made another comment out loud to Mikey unless you're in trouble, buddy, for speeding. I was thinking speeding or whatever. And so.
And who are you referring to when you say?
Whoever was in the vehicle in front.
Could you see what type of vehicles they were? The vehicle that was in front of the police officer?
The vehicle appeared to be a large SUV, suburban type. I wasn't sure if it was a large SUV or a large minivan. The sun was starting to set, twilight was setting in. All I got was the general silhouette form of it from behind due to the officer's lights that were behind the vehicle.
Okay. And did you continue to watch this in your driver's side rear, I guess driver's mirror? I guess.
Left side. Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. And again, what did you see?
At that point in time, I saw the officer of the vehicle jump out of his vehicle and began to what appeared to me he approached the vehicle, and he was approaching rather quickly. That is when I also said out loud, am I allowed to cuss in here?
Say exactly what
Okay. Okay. I said, oh shit, something's about to go, and I did not get the word out as I was watching, which I now know is Officer Benner, approach the larger vehicle. As he approached, coming up onto the driver's side, and I heard 2 shots.
Okay. Now, at any time prior to hearing the 2 shots, what were you watching? Were your eyes completely on the...
I was watching the officer.
Okay. But were you looking into the mirror?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yes.
At any time, did you turn to talk to Mikey at all?
No, sir.
Okay. And so after you hear the 2 shots, what did you do?
I continued to watch.
Okay. And what did you see?
I heard the 2 shots. I watched Officer Benner I'm sorry.
Do you have any water?
Thank you. Thank you. I heard 2 shots fire. I watched. It appeared as if Officer Benner's legs and feet had been kicked out from underneath, or his knees buckled, and he fell backwards.
Okay. After he fell, what did you see?
As he hit the ground, as he was falling backwards, it appeared. I saw his arm backwards. I don't know which one. It was silhouette, but there was an arm that seemed to come backwards. I watched his body turn what I interpreted as back towards his cruiser to crawl away. And I heard 2 more shots. There was approximately, I guess, a 2-second pause between the 2 sets of shots. So 2 shots, he fell, tried to crawl away, or well, what appeared to try to crawl away. Then I had 2 more shots, and then he slumped backwards.
Okay. Before going any further, I want to make sure that the jury understands the exact location and your viewpoint, Ms. Meyer. There is a binder in front of you, and I would like for you to, in that binder, turn to, may I approach, Your Honor?
395. It's probably way back here someplace. I don't think we have that binder.
Let me just hand you what's been admitted as State's Exhibit 395. Awesome. Can you identify that?
Yes, sir. It appears to be a diagram of this area.
Does it reflect exactly where you were at as to where the officer's vehicle was at? The diagram?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let me go ahead and show it and indicate it as well.
Turn this on.
Oh, okay. Pretty simple. Can you adjust that? Ms. Meyer, if you can step down, may she step down here? Okay. Go ahead and come over here. With my pen over here, Ms. Meyer, can you identify exactly where your vehicle was located?
Here.
Okay. And where Officer Benner's vehicle was located?
Here.
Okay. Now, in between these two lines here, was there any obstruction whatsoever from your line of sight, from your vehicle to Officer Benner's vehicle?
No, sir.
Okay. Go ahead and sit down. Thank you. Now, you indicated that you heard 2 shots, a pause. No, I'm sorry, 2 shots, Officer Benner buckled, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
A pause, and then 2 more shots.
Yes, sir.
Now, after you see Officer Benner on the ground, what did you do?
Initially, I was not sure where the shots were coming from or what exactly had happened. The first set of shots, I remained in my vehicle, continued to watch through the left side mirror. After the 2 shots, and I realized, when Officer Benner slumped backwards, or down, that's when I realized that he could have possibly been shot, and so I jumped out of my vehicle and began to run towards Officer Benner.
Now, going back a little bit, did you see Officer Benner exit his vehicle?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. I'm going to show you, I'm going to, State's Exhibit number 30. Can you describe it?
It's a police vehicle.
Okay. Does it appear to be Officer Benner's vehicle?
Yes, it does.
And again, I'm going to ask you to step down, Ms. Meyer, and I want you to indicate to the jury exactly, or maybe I could turn it this way, yeah. Yes, that's better. Were you able to see how far Officer Benner got out of the vehicle before you heard the 2 shots, the first 2 shots?
Can you clarify that for
Well,
me, please?
You indicated that you saw Officer Benner get out of his vehicle.
Okay.
Okay. How far did Officer Benner get out of the vehicle, exit the vehicle, when you first heard the first 2 shots?
He approached quickly from here to here.
Okay. And was there another vehicle? I mean, it doesn't show the other vehicle. Was the other vehicle was situated?
Yes, sir. The other vehicle was here in a partial turn.
Okay. And approximately how far, looking at the vehicle, did Officer Benner get to when you heard the first 2 shots?
He got approximately to the back left door.
Okay. So with a suburban van, there's the front door, driver's side, and a passenger driver's side.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Again, approximately where would he, when you heard the first 2 shots, where was Officer Benner?
He was at by what in EMS we call the B post.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead, sit down. Ms. Meyer. Thank you. While you saw Officer Benner exit his vehicle and come up to the B post, or up before you heard the 2 shots, did you happen to see if he had anything with him, in his hands, anything?
No, sir.
Okay. You didn't see, or he didn't have anything?
I'm sorry. I did not see.
Okay. Now, going back again, he falls after the first 2 shots, pause, 2 more shots, he's on the ground. Are you still in the vehicle? Your vehicle?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you do anything after that?
After the second shots, my ignition was on because it was cold. I turned, opened the car door, turned the ignition off, grabbed my phone, and began running across the parking lot towards Officer Benner, trying to dial 911 at the same time.
Okay. Showing you again what's been admitted as State's Exhibit 395, the diagram that we talked about where your vehicle was located and where Officer Benner's vehicle was located. How did you get to Officer Benner's vehicle from your car?
Do you want me to?
Yep, if you want to come down here, maybe it's a little
Okay,
easier.
As I stepped out of the vehicle on the driver's side, ran this way, there was a large bush here, so and railing here. So, and when I say large, about 3 feet high. I came across here and then realized I could not get between here for a straight shot at him, so I had to come around this way to there.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Ms. Miller. I hate to have you keep going, getting over there.
It's okay.
Now, while you're watching this going on in your rearview mirror, as Officer Benner gets out of the vehicle and approaches the Suburban, the SUV as you said, at any time did you observe any physical confrontation between Officer Benner and any occupants in the vehicle?
No, sir.
Did you see any occupants of the vehicle get out of their vehicle?
No, sir.
Now, while you're watching in your mirror, can you describe to the jury what you were seeing, how the mirror appeared? I mean, the picture that you were seeing.
Everything was due to the twilight hour, still a little bit of light, but not a lot. The street lights were starting to come on. Officer Benner had his large, I guess there's search or floodlights on, as well as his emergency lights on and headlights. Everything between me and Officer Benner's lights was in silhouette form.
Okay. But you had a direct view of that?
Yes, yes, sir.
Now, Ms. Meyer, you had an opportunity after all of this happened to go back with the New Mexico State Police and the Rio Rancho Police Department to do a reconstruction, is that of the scene, or a reshoot of the scene?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you, before we go any further, I think I can show the jury a little bit better what you're talking about. Can you explain to the jury what that entailed?
Detective Romero asked me to meet at the scene for, as you said, to set things up so they could understand, I guess, well, I don't know, but asked me. I had the same car. I parked it in the same spot. Then we proceeded to work together. They had some other officers where the two vehicles were Officer Benner's and the other vehicle, and I sat in my vehicle with the door shut, window rolled down, and spoke with Detective Romero, who's outside, and they moved the vehicles into the position to where I saw the same, or approximately the same thing in my left side mirror.
Okay, I'm going to show you it's State's Exhibit 242. Is this part of that reshoot that they had you there?
That's me, yes.
Okay. And that's the same vehicle that you were in?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And they positioned you in the same, they tried to position you at the same location that you were on May 25th, 2015, at about 8 p.m.
That is correct. I was in the same parking spot.
Okay. And you indicated that they positioned some vehicles to represent that what you had seen. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let me show you State's Exhibit 219. Is that one of the photographs or
Yeah.
that date? Okay.
Yes, sir.
It indicates, I guess, or can you describe it? Can you?
My vehicle is in the foreground to the left, approximately in the center, a little above midpoint is the first vehicle. The darker black one was representing the other vehicle, and the whiter one kind of further up on the hill between that darker vehicle and the police cruiser that's behind that was to represent Officer Benner's.
Okay, let me just.
Okay. The two vehicles that are on the top of the picture, are those the two vehicles that they had positioned?
Yes, sir. Those were the ones they were using.
Okay. And how did they come about positioning them in that location?
I can tell you my part on it.
Okay, yes.
Okay. We got I told them kind of a general idea of where things were, and then as such I sat in the driver's side of my car, looked, and then I would get out and tell Detective Romero, who was there with me, you move it to the left, move it to the right, move it down, move it, the vehicle, whichever vehicle, and then we did that until we achieved the closest similarity.
Okay. Now, I'll show you State's Exhibit 222. Taken that date. Is that a view from what would represent as Officer Benner's vehicle to your vehicle?
Yes, that's my vehicle in the background there to the left, just beyond that the light pole.
Okay. And when you talk about how you got to Officer Benner's vehicle or to Officer Benner on May 25th, you described how you ran. Is that the bush that you're talking about that's a little bit above off the...
Yes, sir. The bush kind of almost in the center of the picture, and below that tree, I guess. That's the bush and the railing I was referencing.
Okay. Now, these pictures show that there was no vehicles parked. That's a parking lot, correct?
Yes, sir. That is correct.
North of your vehicle is Memorial Park. Is that, or not north, it is east of your vehicle, correct?
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Now, it's a parking lot area. Were there any vehicles between you and Officer Benner on May 25th, 2015?
The only vehicle that would be between us would be the vehicle that was directly in front of him.
Okay. But as far as your view?
No, there was no vehicles in the parking lot, if that's...
Okay. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about when you're running to the vehicles. Can you describe what was occurring with you, first of all?
As I was running towards the vehicles, I was trying to call 911 and run, and I got the dispatcher on the phone.
Okay.
I told them that I had an officer down. He proceeded to ask me the location. I was trying to explain to him where we were. He repeatedly asked me kind of where we were, to clarify. I don't know, it was because I was running out of breath. I'm not sure why. But I did have to repeat several times and clarify through several different means as best as I could, because I did not have a direct address. So I told him Esther, I believe it's Bone Library, and then I was trying to tell him cross streets of Pine Tree and Southern, and he wanted an address. I couldn't give it to him.
Okay. Failed to show this. States Exhibit 432. Is that picture represent what you were seeing on May 25th?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And States Exhibit 228, would that be what you were seeing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, at any time did you see anybody come out of the front vehicle, the SUV, in front of Officer Benner's vehicle? Anybody come out of the vehicle?
I did not see anyone exit the vehicle, no.
Okay. As you're running toward Officer Benner, did you notice anything around the vehicle?
I noticed what I interpreted as a female standing in the front.
And again, please, if you can get down and,
Sure.
and show exactly approximately where you saw this.
I saw what I interpreted to be a female standing approximately right here in front of the grid. I'm sorry, here, in front of the vehicle in the front.
Okay. And what was that? You indicated she was a female? You could.
That's how I interpreted her, yes.
Okay. Was she doing anything, or that person doing anything?
Yes, Chet,
If you can tell the jury.
turn around.
Yeah.
She had her hands up, kind of in the air as such. She appeared to be, I interpreted her and appeared to be upset or motioning to someone in the vehicle.
Okay. Go ahead and sit down. Phil. Was the SUV vehicle, was the driver door open? Were you able to determine?
I was not, no.
Okay. Now, you're running to Officer Benner, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. What was Mikey doing? I would assume he's sitting in the car with you. What did he do when the shots were fired?
We were still in the vehicle when the shots were fired. I do not know what Mikey was doing. At the time, my eyes never left the left side mirror.
Okay.
All I know is that when I jumped and ran, he's younger than I, so he's already in front of me and faster. So I saw him running in front.
Okay. He was headed toward Officer Benner also.
Yes.
Now, when you arrived at Officer Benner, how was he situated?
As I approached the scene, I noticed that he was on his back with his head facing me, or the direction that I had just, the top of his head facing me, the direction I had just come in. Continue?
Okay, yes.
Okay. As I approached, I'm just trying to take everything in, trying to figure out what's going on. The vehicle in the front had left. I looked to the right. and there's some Cheetos on the ground. At first, I was not sure what they were.
Well, let me ask you, the State's Exhibit 43, did you see a Cheetos bag, this Cheetos bag there?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Okay. So that's what you were referring to about.
Yes, but as I approached, I got to him and there was a lot of blood in his airway, his nose and his mouth. And I remember thinking as a paramedic, that didn't make sense to have so much in such a small amount of time. And that's when I tried to look to see where possibly it had come from. Around, there was already blood on the pavement. Continue.
Yeah. Yes. When you got there and you saw this, did you administer any aid, try to administer aid to Officer Benner?
Yes. So as I approached, like I said, I saw that. I looked over, saw the Cheetos. I initially had mistaken them for what I thought and have seen as brain matter before. I turned back to Officer Benner to look for a defect, a wound of some kind. I didn't see anything, and that's when I looked back and saw the Cheetos bag that you gave me, or showed me. I knelt next to him, and he looked at me, and he took a couple of agonal breaths.
When you talk about agonal breaths, what?
Kind of gasping and gurgling, and he was looking at me, and I tried to clear his airway, so I rolled him towards me, and I tried to clear his airway with my hand.
After attempting to clear his airway, did you continue to proceed to give him aid?
Yes. So Mikey was there as well. I was focused on the upper half, turning from the chest to the head. I still couldn't figure out where all the blood was coming from because, like I said, nothing on the neck and nothing on the head. Mikey was taking care of the waist down, so I don't know what he was doing.
Now, briefly, do you know what Mikey does?
Mikey is a Bernalillo County firefighter. His level is an intermediate level.
Intermediate level firefighter?
EMT.
EMT, okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I rolled him back over. I'm sorry, but prior to rolling him, he, like I said, he took a couple of agonal or kind of gasping breaths and then stopped. I rolled him, tried to clear his airway, rolled him back over. I noticed that he had stopped breathing at that time. And I checked for a pulse.
Were you able to determine whether Officer Benner had a pulse?
I checked on the right-hand side of his neck. I couldn't feel a pulse. the blood was still coming out of the airway, or the mouth and nose. I knew I needed to remove his uniform.
And did you do so?
I did.
Okay. Did you remove any other, his shirt?
I unzipped I took his shirt off. I believe I unzipped, he had his zippered shirt. I had a vest underneath. I removed that. He had a dark t-shirt underneath. A bystander was standing across on the other side of Officer Benner. Asked if he could help. I said I needed to cut the shirt. He had a knife. I believe he cut the shirt. There was another female at the head of Officer Benner. I believe she was the one that I threw my phone to, because the dispatcher was not understanding where I was, and I was focused on trying to save him. So I gave her the phone, because I couldn't talk to them and do that at the same time.
At some point, were you able to determine where the injuries Officer Benner sustained?
The second time that, as we took the uniform off, rolled him another time, so now he does not have, we removed it in order to perform, I removed it in order to perform CPR. Cleared his airway again, rolled him back on his back. He now has no shirt on, but when we rolled him, I noticed a defect to the right posterior back of the shoulder.
When you say defect, what are we talking about?
It was a wound of some kind.
And when you say post?
In the back. Sorry. That was it. I didn't see anything on the chest. I didn't understand why there was so much blood. Checked for a pulse again. Didn't have one, and then I began CPR.
Were there other individuals trying to help you?
Yes, sir.
And were you trying to direct them as to what needed to be done?
Yes. I'm sure. I know at some point in time I did being a paramedic, I go into autopilot. We tend to start ordering people around. I believe that I directed Mikey to go see if Officer Benner had a cat tourniquet in the back.
What is a cat tourniquet?
I'm not sure what it stands for, but it's a military. It was first used in the military. It's the tourniquets that we use on the streets to stop any kind of arterial bleeds.
Okay.
I believe Mikey was giving me feedback about there was a defect in the leg, a wound in the leg as well. We talked briefly about cat tourniquets, just go see if he had one. Asked about gloves. It's ingrained in our training. The gentleman that was across from me, he was asking me what he could do. Like I said, I had asked him to cut the shirt off. The lady at the front, at the top of the head, I had given her my phone. And those four of us, for a while, I'm sure it wasn't very long, but it seemed like a long time, were rendering aid.
Were you able to determine whether Officer Benner had sustained any defect other than the one on the back shoulder?
Yes, sir. As we're doing CPR, I began to hear other vehicles approach. I had another officer approach from the side that the gentleman, the other side of Officer Benner, approached this way. I looked up. He said something into his mic. I believe he said CPR was in progress. I asked him if he had an AED. He said no. By this time I can hear the other officers coming behind me, approaching with tires squealing and sirens wailing. I had an officer appear to the right of me as I'm continuing CPR. So it would have been on Officer Benner's left side. Keep going.
At any time when you approached Officer Benner while he was lying on the ground, did you observe anything that he may have had with him, on him, other than the vest, his belt, anything in his hands?
No, sir.
Now, at some point, you indicated that you were able to determine an additional defect?
Yes, sir. As the officers approach, one began talking to Officer Benner. Another officer was there as well, continued to take the rest of the uniform off. At that point in time, I noticed that there was another defect on the side of the left shoulder.
With that in mind, what else did you do to Officer Benner as far as rendering aid?
At one point in time, I believe I tried to cover the left posterior, or the right, posterior wound with my hand or with the glove. I didn't have an occlusive dressing, so I was trying to think. I scooped out his airway with my hand twice. And CPR. That was it for me.
Okay. Did the ambulance finally show up?
Yes. I had asked the gentleman across from me, again, what else can I do? Oh, I do believe he had come back from, I believe that I gave him an order to get on the radio, Officer Benner's radio, because the dispatch was still not understanding where I was. I tried to call for the badge number. I noticed Officer Benner's badge number. I was hoping that maybe if I gave them the badge number, that they could ping his location for whatever stop that was going on and they could find us. That was prior to me throwing or giving the phone to the lady. Then I asked the gentleman across from me to go call on Officer Benner's radio, to officer down. I said, tell him there's an officer down, an officer's been shot. Then he came back. When he came back, again, what can I do? He asked me, what can I do to help? And I said, I'm going to need you to kneel down here, and when I say go, I need you to take over compressions for me, CPR.
Okay. Now, ambulance comes, did you assist in transporting or getting Officer Benner onto the gurney?
When I heard Rescue 1 coming, I asked the gentleman across from me to, okay, now start CPR. I got up and I started running towards the intersection of Pine Tree and Southern, and when I turned around, I noticed that there was a lot of police vehicles that seemed to be clogging the street. I think I yelled to have them move, but I think the PD officers were already there because everything kind of happened at the same time. They moved out of the way of the engine and the rescue. The engine pulled into Pine Tree, kind of slowed down, and then sped up around and came just past Officer Benner. The rescue came in. I flagged them down and then ran back towards where the rescue and the engine and Officer Benner were. As the driver of the rescue stepped out, I identified myself as, I'm a paramedic with Albuquerque Ambulance. This is what you have.
Now, Meyer, you identified a radio. Do you know what radio they used to contact dispatch?
I do not.
Now, but you indicated to them to go.
I said go to indicating Officer Benner's cruiser vehicle and to call.
Okay. Now, they go ahead and transport Officer Benner. You had spoke a little bit earlier about this girl that's standing in front of the vehicle, waving her hands at this point.
Yes, sir.
Were you able to determine what she was wearing?
Yes, sir. As I was running over prior to getting next to Officer Benner's side, I noticed that she was standing in front of the vehicle as indicated with her hands raised up. I could not hear anything. I couldn't see her mouth moving. It was just a body stance that I've been familiar with running other calls in my job. As I approached, the vehicle was also taking off. I got approximately halfway between my vehicle and Officer Benner's vehicle before the vehicle that had been stopped in front of his took off. And as it took off, I'm not sure if she walked back towards the right-hand side of his vehicle, the right passenger side of his vehicle, or if it was kind of a simultaneous, the vehicle in front, walk towards the right of the vehicle in front of the passenger, or if the vehicle was also taking and coming at the same time. I'm not sure if I am making sense.
Yeah. When she's standing there with her hands up, were you able to see if she had anything in her hands?
No, I was not.
Okay. Did it appear that she had anything in her hands?
Objection. Speculation.
What she observed,
One thing that they teach us is scene safety. I did not observe, I observed open palms straight up, and I did not perceive her as a threat, so that's why I continued.
Now, after Officer Benner was transported by ambulance, did you stay around the scene?
Yes, sir.
Okay. At any point after after everybody left, the Officer Benner left, and did you happen to see this girl again?
I saw what I perceived to be the same female.
Right.
After I gave the quick report, turnover report, if you will, to the rescue, they loaded him and they took off. I stepped back off the curb, back towards my vehicle on the east side of Pine Tree, towards the parks, and I was standing there with Mikey, and I looked over and I saw some people standing around a woman that was either leaning or sitting against a tree that was there. I registered in my brain that that was the female. She had a dark, what appeared to be a dark hoodie type long sleeve with either some jeans or jogging pants or something, and her hair was pulled up. And that's the person that I saw standing in front of the vehicle as I was running over.
Okay. At any time did you observe them, any medical being rendered to her?
I'm not sure how much time had passed. An additional rescue. I just happened to look over and I see rescue personnel putting her on a gurney. And I remember thinking, oh, okay, I guess she's pretty shook up. I guess, I would be too. I guess that's why she's going to the hospital, because that's what I translated. She's on the fire department's gurney. She's, I guess, going to be transported somewhere.
Okay. Now, Ms. Meyer, at that time, did you, while you're standing there after Officer Benner has been transported, did you have occasion to give a statement? Were you interviewed, spoken to by a police officer?
Yes, sir. Several.
Okay. And you gave them, at the time, you gave them a statement as to, or what you had gone
Yes,
through?
sir.
Now, Ms. Meyer, on May 25th, 2019, at 8 o'clock p.m., were you planning to come into a situation that you were going to have to render aid to somebody that was shot and dying?
No, sir.
Okay. You were, on Memorial Day, your plans were what?
I had no plans. I really
Okay.
just to hang out with my friend Mikey for a few minutes and.
I was correct. 2015, not 2019. Okay. We're ahead of schedule. Okay. Now, so no plans, just having a day at the park, and this occurs, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When you spoke to the officers on the scene, how would you describe your state of mind or your demeanor when you were talking to the officers?
I've been in a lot of what we would consider an EMS critical calls. I've seen a lot. I've been doing this for just shy of 10 years. So I was on autopilot. I was hyper aware. I would say that adrenaline was pumping, but you get to a point where it just kind of doesn't affect you as the same anymore. If that, you don't get nervous or excited or things like that. But I was hyper aware. I knew what was going on, and
when you spoke to the officer at the scene, did you explain to him whether Officer Benner was armed or unarmed at the time?
I do not recall.
Okay. Do you recall whether you indicated to them whether Officer Benner was in a defensive posture or an offensive posture?
Yes, I did make a statement that as he fell backwards, after the first two shots were fired and he fell backwards, I did notice his what I interpreted as his right hand or right arm kind of cocked back, because I could see the silhouette like a triangle cocked back, and I interpreted that as he was reaching for his gun as he was falling back.
Okay.
But that was the only statement that was made to that.
Now, at any point after the incident on May 25th, did you have occasion to speak to law enforcement after that?
Several times.
Okay. And they ask you the same questions, basically, probably in a better way, but did they ask you the same questions of what occurred?
Yes, sir.
Was there anything you indicated to them regarding the the driver door, that you recall?
I believe that initially that night, after reviewing I believe I had said that I was unaware. They had asked me if I saw anyone get out of the vehicle, and if so, what side. And I said I was unsure of what side. They had asked me about the female, where she came from, and I said I did not see.
Now, if I may, Ms. Meyer, again, at Memorial Day, didn't have any plans to go through this process, did you?
Objection, asked and answered.
I have no further questions.
Good afternoon, Ms. Meyer.
Hi.
So, Ms. Meyer, let's talk a little bit about the various statements you did in reference to what you experienced that day, okay?
Okay.
So, you actually did a handwritten statement concerning the events that you experienced, right?
Yes.
And when you did that statement, that was a voluntary statement that law enforcement asked you to complete, right?
Yes.
And when you completed that statement, you yourself wrote it out.
Yes.
And you wrote it out that very same day on May 25th of 2015.
Yes.
And in fact, you completed that form at least in military time, 2039, right?
Yes.
What time is that in non-military time?
8:39 p.m.
So about 30 to 40 minutes after everything took place, approximately.
Yes.
And you understand that the reason for doing these statements is because things happen very quickly and it's important to memorialize what you remember from the incident.
Yes.
And that is indeed why you completed this voluntary statement on the 25th at 8:39 p.m.
Yes.
And isn't it accurate, Ms. Meyer, that when you completed this statement, you made, you referenced what you saw when the vehicle, when the SUV was pulled over right there on Pine Tree, right?
Yes.
And in fact, you indicated in this statement that the SUV did not make a complete turn when it stopped and someone stepped out of the SUV, right?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm looking at the statement, I don't see it. The counsel can refer to where she's talking about.
Is that what you wrote in that statement?
May I see it?
Sure. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Just start right highlighting. Okay. Yes, I did write that.
Okay. So as of 8:39 on May 25th of 2015, your recollection was that this vehicle did not make a complete turn when it stopped and someone stepped out, right?
Yes.
And at that point, at least according from your statement, Officer Benner steps out of his vehicle and walks towards the driver's side of the SUV.
Actually, in the statement, it says that I don't, that someone stepped out of the vehicle, but I wasn't sure
What side?
what side,
Right.
which is what I had said to the officers. Then can I ask your question
Sure,
again?
no
I'm
problem.
sorry.
No problem. So you're not sure what door they came out of, but you know that someone stepped out of the SUV, right?
Yes.
And then at that point, you see Officer Benner get out of his vehicle, right? At least according to what you wrote in your statement.
There was, as I'm watching this through the left side mirror, my eyes are focused on Officer Benner.
I understand that.
Ms.
Meyer, let me just ask you
Judge,
something.
if she can answer the
It's
question.
non-responsive, Your Honor.
Well, she's answering the question, Judge, just because she takes time.
Sustained.
So let me just ask the question, okay? And you'll have another opportunity to explain this, okay? So Ms. Meyer, according to what you wrote in your statement, did you not write that after this person stepped out of the SUV, you're not sure which side, but this person stepped out of the SUV, Officer Benner steps out of his vehicle and walks towards the driver's side of the SUV. Is that what you wrote in your statement?
Yes.
And it was at that point that you heard 2 shots fired and Officer Benner fall down. That's what you wrote in your statement.
Yes.
And then you heard the additional 2 shots fired after Officer Benner fell down.
Yes.
And then you saw this larger, in your statement you wrote possibly female standing at the front right passenger side of the vehicle, right?
Yes.
The state showed you the reshoot or the sort of redoing of the scene as part of their exhibits that you said was accurate and depicted the scene as you remember it, right?
Yes.
So just a couple of points of clarification with that. When we were looking at those photos, it looked like it was sunny out. The sun was still up, right?
In those photos, that is correct.
But you described this scene that it was actually twilight and that Officer Benner had shined his spotlight or some sort of light on the SUV in front of him, right?
Yes.
So the reenactment of this scene wasn't quite accurate because the lighting was different. You'd agree with that?
The lighting was very similar.
Okay. They were not using spotlights in that reenactment, though, were they?
No.
Okay. And you recall the spotlight as being part of this because you described the figures you saw as silhouettes.
Yes.
Okay. And so you weren't able to actually see the detail of the person, but you saw them silhouetted in the lighting illuminated by Officer Benner's vehicle, right? Do you want me to say that a different way?
Yes.
Okay. So you recall that what you saw in your rear view or your side view mirror that day when this happened on May 25th was the silhouettes of the individuals. You couldn't see them with clarity because of the light that Benner was using.
I saw one silhouette, which was Officer Benner.
And that was because his light was shining behind him, correct?
Yes. Yes. Through that left mirror, I saw one silhouette.
Okay. And then when you got closer to the vehicle, you described this larger female as having her hands up in the air, right?
Yes.
And you also described her as being very aggressive, didn't you?
It was my interpretation of what I was seeing as she had an aggressive stance. Yes.
And in fact, you described her as being like a pissed off wife or girlfriend.
Yes.
And you never saw her fall down on the ground?
No.
You never saw her stumble and fall?
No.
Trip? And you never saw her limping either?
No.
In fact, you stated that there was nothing about her behavior, this woman's behavior, that made you think that she needed some sort of medical attention, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And you described this SUV as the windows on the SUV being very dark, with a dark tint, right?
Yes.
And by dark tint, you mean that it's hard to see what's inside of the vehicle, right? That's what you mean by a dark tint, right?
Yes, I mean, varies if there's a light on inside or not, I guess.
Ms. Meyer, you stated on direct examination something about a B post. What is that?
The B post would be between the, generally speaking, the front seats of a vehicle and the back seats of the vehicle, or the second row of seating, I guess I should say, since we have 3 seats now in vehicles. So it would be the post where the front seat belts are normally attached.
Okay. And what relevance did the B post have in your mind in this case?
Would you repeat that?
Sure. And why did you mention the B post on your direct examination?
Today,
Yes.
I was asked approximately where I saw Benner fall.
And that was the B post on the SUV. Is that right?
Approximately, yes.
Okay, first the witness, Your Honor. So, Ms. Meyer, I'm showing you what's been marked as for identification as Defendant's Exhibit A. Do you recognize this document?
Yes.
Okay. And you would agree that that is the sort of the diagram you created when you gave your police interview, is that right?
It's a very rough diagram, yes.
But it's how you recall the layout of the cars that day, right?
Yes.
Your car, Officer Benner's car, and then the SUV?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, permission to publish to the jury? Okay. And so just correct me if I'm wrong as I go through it here. We've got this box up here that says B. Myers Xterra, so that's your vehicle, right?
Yes.
And then there's that arrow pointing forward, so that's the way you're faced. Your vehicle is facing that way, correct?
Correct, yes.
And then back here, we have Pine Tree Road that runs this way, right? That's north-south, sort of.
Yes.
And then you've got a box that's sort of at a diagonal. That would be the SUV.
Yes. Yes.
And then that arrow also indicates the front of the vehicle.
That indicates the direction the vehicle was
Traveling.
facing,
Okay.
because it wasn't moving.
Okay, and so the arrow, the front of the arrow is the front of the vehicle. The tip of the arrow, right?
Approximately, yes, sure.
I'm just so we know the vehicle's facing that way is what I'm trying to get at.
Yes.
Okay. And then behind that vehicle, there's a box, and that's Officer Benner's vehicle, correct?
Yes.
And so this is just demonstrating your viewpoint as you recall it on May 25th of 2015.
Yes.
Okay. May I have a moment, Your Honor? Nothing further. Thank you.
Mr. Lopez.
Ms. Myers, just two questions at this time. Where was your focus when you were running toward Officer Benner?
I was focused on Officer Benner.
Okay. And was the girl just something you saw or somebody you saw at that time? It was just
The female I saw as I was running.
okay. Now the diagram that you just pointed out to you just a minute ago, you were saying that it's a rough diagram, isn't it? Right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, was the SUV right? I mean, was the officer pointed together like this, or was the SUV in front somehow at a different angle?
The SUV in the front, as I said earlier, was in the process of making a turn,
Okay.
a right-hand turn.
If you can step down, I don't want to, but I'm going to publish State's Exhibit 30. Can you get down and approximately show where the vehicle was using Officer Benner's vehicle in relation to Officer Benner's vehicle? Yes.
About right there, approximately.
So when Ms. Leos indicates the arrow, you're basically, in your rough draft, you're trying to indicate that it's headed on Pine Tree Road.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Ms. Leos asked you some questions regarding your statement when you made only minutes after trying to save Officer Benner's life. And she talked about you didn't know if it was the passenger or driver's side. Can you explain now what you meant by that?
In the written statement, trying to be as thorough but fit within what we had to as well, or time to get it out on paper. As I'm watching in the left side mirror, my primary focus is on Officer Benner. My peripherals picked up a slight movement on the edge of my mirror that just a slight movement that then went away from the mirror, so out of the mirror. I don't know what you would call that. View, thank you. So it went, if I'm looking at my left-hand mirror, it went out of towards the right of my perspective, to the right. I interpreted that as being a person that moved.
Okay. Could you say it was a person?
No, it was a dark shadow that moved.
Okay. That night, after trying to save Officer Benner's life, that's how you interpreted it? That's how you indicated it?
Yes. And that's what I was referring to.
Okay. You weren't trying to say that you actually saw a person?
I did not see a full silhouette. The only silhouette.
No further questions.
May this witness be released? Ms. Meyer, you may step down, you're welcome to stand in the podium, or you may be excused permanently.
Thank you.
Take a 10-minute recess.
All rise.
We'll be in recess for 10 minutes.